George Dickel has a new whiskey with an 8 on the bottle. Yes, they already have this bottle with an 8 year, but this one isn't an age statement. On this bottle, however, it is. It's also the first time that Dickel has ever released a product actually using the term bourbon. What? Intrigued? Let's learn more on What's on the Shelf Wednesday. Welcome back to What's on the Shelf Wednesday on the Master and Drum. I am Jason C, and this is the series where I bring you quick reviews of whiskeys that you can actually find on the shelf, including bourbons, ryes, scotches, Irish whiskeys, and more. So what's on the shelf today? A relatively new release. This is brand new George Dickel 8-year-old bourbon whiskey. That's right, bourbon whiskey. Most George Dickel and Jack Daniel's offerings could legally qualify as bourbon. They have mash bills with high corn content, they're aged in new charred oak, they have the same distillation rules, and so on. But George Dickel and Jack Daniel's are labeled as Tennessee whiskey because they use the traditional charcoal filtration techniques, otherwise known as the Lincoln County process. George Dickel and Jack Daniel's, however, do have different methods they use for that same process. Another thing you might not have noticed is the way George Dickel spells the word whiskey on their bottles, without the E in the traditional Scottish style. Now, before the 8-year and the bottled and bond came along, Dickel's main offerings were this number 8 and this number 12. Like I mentioned, these are not age statements. The 8 and 12 are both recipe numbers, and they're both generally available everywhere for 25 bucks and under. So that brings us to the newly released George Dickel Bourbon, the first time Dickel has ever released a product using the term bourbon on the label, but that nice big 8 on the front is an age statement this time, rather than just that old recipe number. What's also interesting is it doesn't have the words Tennessee whiskey on the label either, although it does say charcoal chill filtered right there on the side. Now, I feel like they should have used a 7-year or a 9-year to avoid any confusion with the 8 recipe, but you know, here we are. All right, but real quick, let's be clear. Just because a whiskey goes through the charcoal mellowing process before it goes into the barrel, it could still be called a bourbon, just like this bottle here. So put away any arguments that you may have. It's the truth. So why did Dickel call this bourbon compared to all those other Dickel offerings? Nicole Austin, general manager and distiller at Cascade Hollow and all-around megastar in the distilling world, said about the release, "At Cascade Hollow, we have a lot of whiskeys that exemplify the Tennessee whiskey style, but we also have inventory that has a lot more in common with bourbon as we understand it in America." She also went on to say that in releasing a bourbon, she hopes that it will entice people to reassess what they think the distillery is capable of. After tasting the liquid, she also feels like it was the absolute best use for this particular whiskey. All right, guys, so here are the stats. It's small batch, it's 8 years old, so there could be some older stuff in here depending on what's blended in here. It's 90 proof. Typical George Dickel mash bill, 84% corn, 8% rye, and 8% malted barley. This is a permanent addition to the lineup with a retail price of only about $32.99. But I actually got this for 30 bucks right on the dot. What's interesting is I've been saying since last year that I've tried some Dickel single barrels, and even last year's 11-year bottle and bond had more traditional bourbon profiles. So this release does not really surprise me at all. Also, let's not be naive here. Diageo, who owns, Cascade Hollow Distilling, they're not stupid. The popularity of bourbon isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So to add a $30 8-year age-stated bourbon to the shelf to compete with the likes of Knob Creek 9-year, Four Roses Small Batch, and Elijah Craig Small Batch is a bold move, but maybe one they needed to get more eyes and palates on George Dickel. So let's give it a try. Here we go. First thing I get immediately is honey and citrus. That's really the two big notes that jump out of the glass in the beginning. There's some nice sweet oak here going on as well, like a little bit of a toasted note. Getting a good amount of apple, maybe some apple peel. Yeah, nice Macintosh red apple for sure. The honey characteristic in here is pretty strong. I mean, now I'm searching for that Dickel minerality. Now, in choosing this, This was a type of profile that was probably a little bit far away from that, you know, the Flintstone vitamin note, and I'm really not getting a lot of it here. Yeah, it's very citrusy, very honey, not super complex, a little bit of caramel. But for me, it's actually missing kind of the big punch of vanilla that you normally get with a bourbon. I mean, it's mainly apple, citrus, a little bit of caramel. I'm actually getting a little hint of coconut too. All right, interesting nose for the first ever George Dickel bourbon. All right, let's give it a try. Here we go. Man, super easy on the palate. You know, only 90 proof. This isn't gonna hit you hard, but I would say the nose matches the palate on this one. I do wish I had a little bit more punch of flavor here, but yeah, you get a lot of the honey. I'm still getting like a toasted coconut type note a little bit. The citrus, like a citrus rind almost, has a slight bitterness to it. Go for another sip here. Second sip was a little better. It kind of has like a short to medium finish, a little bit of spice lingering there. Not the most complex, there's some nuttiness. I'm missing like that really nice like candied orange peel that I get from a lot of George Dickel products. I'm really not getting it here. And again on the palate, I'm also missing that nice punch of vanilla you get with a typical Kentucky bourbon. While, you know, the flavors here are, you know, they're just fine. There's nothing really off-putting. It's sweet, it's very easy to sip. It's got some savory notes, nice little lingering spice too. Yeah, you know, I'm kind of missing like that nice punch of vanilla and rich caramel. Let's go for another sip here. Yeah, the more you sip this, I think the less interesting it gets. I don't know, I feel like if they're able to put an 8-year age-stated bourbon out on the shelf for such a good price, man, why not just make it 100 proof, give people a little extra flavor to stand apart from the others? You know, Knob Creek 9 years 100 proof. You know, why not bump it up there a little bit? I just think at 90 proof, it really kind of, you know, kills the flavors a little bit. You know, I feel like if you want people to get more into George Dickel and taste the more bourbon side of their profile, you know, why not give them a little bit more proof, a little bit more flavor? One last sip. The big surprise here is the very, very lack of George Dickel minerality. You know, that Flintstone vitamin note that everyone gets, that shies away from it. It's really not present too much at all. It's incredible. Even with the charcoal, you know, filtration, you're not getting that typical note that you get on, you know, the Recipe 8, the Recipe 12, or even the Bottled and Bond. But speaking of Bottled and Bond, a little bit of a bonus review coming up now. George Dickel Bottled and Bond 2021 release. This is the third release of George Dickel Bottled and Bond, which had a great following and an amazing value since its release. Now, the 2019 release was a 13-year offering. It won a bunch of awards, even though it was, you know, it was kind of polarizing for, you know, its heavy oak and its, I don't know, what's the word? It's dickliness. let's get that added to the dictionary. Dickliness. It's a thing. Now, I mentioned the 2020 release, which was an 11-year that followed it up, and as I mentioned, had more of a bourbony profile to it, and I thought it was a true change-up from the regular Dickel profile, which I think was on purpose to appeal to the masses. Now, I also think that led in part to creating this one as well. So the 2021 release is back to a 13-year age statement like the 2019 release, bottled at 100 proof and retails for about 45 bucks. So again, another fantastic value offering from George Dickel. So let's try it. All right, so this is full of Flintstone vitamins. Yeah, I get like that fresh cut wood note that you get sometimes with George Dickel on here, which can also be some of that Flintstone vitamin-y, you know, kind of goes hand in hand with that. But I get that candied orange peel in this for sure. That's why I'm thinking, like, if this was at 100 proof, I wonder if you would get more of that. Getting actually a nice fruit note here too. You almost feel like it's finished a little bit. It's almost like grapey. I don't know, it's a weird note to get in George Dickel. Getting like a winey, grapey type note going on in here. Again, this is heavy oak. I don't think it's as heavy as the original 13-year release, and it's not as funky, but it does have more of the traditional George Dickel notes. All right, let's give this one a try. Here we go. Wow, see on this one, I just get vanilla and orange coming through. Very strong. A lot of vanilla, a lot of orange peel. Has a nice like butteriness to it. I think George Dickel, as you try more and more of it, some of them, remember, it's got a very high corn content. So some of them can come across a little bit more buttery than others. Another sip here. A lot of cinnamon, a lot of oak. This is more classic George Dickel on that side. Again, I don't think it's as heavy or as rich and funky as the first 13 year was, but it also is bringing in some attributes from the 11 year. There's the second release, so there's a little bit more of the caramel coming through, a little more cinnamon, definitely some more vanilla than I'm getting here, but it's still carrying that overlaying oak and George Dickliness that I was talking about before. Some of that minerality, the Flintstone vitamin note, but I'm still getting a little bit of that nuttiness and a little bit of like that grape coming through too. One last sip and we'll wrap it up. Wow, I even got a little bit of a chocolate punch right on the back end of that. Really nice bourbon. I definitely prefer the Bottled and Bond over this new 8-year bourbon. Overall, the Bottled and Bond, if you love George Dickel, you can't go wrong with it. It's a 13-year expression for $45, 100 proof Bottled and Bond. Still an amazing value. Like I said, it's not as oaky and funky as the first one was, but also not as bourbon forward as last year's 11-year was. So it's somewhere kind of right in the middle, which is nice. Now, the 8-year bourbon, man, I just want this to be, I wish it was a little bit higher in proof. It's coming across as a little bit flat. I do see the potential in this to be definitely more bourbony. There's barely any of that Dickel minerality in here. You know, as this comes out, I'm hoping we get some more, you know, bourbony notes in here as we move forward. I think if this was just up a little bit in proof, you know, say 95, 96, even at that 100 proof point, like the Bottled and Bond, it probably would have even drew more interest to the bottle. But right now, you know, it's a little bit flat. I feel like I want more from it, some more sweetness, just like a typical bourbon, but we'll see what happens down the line. But overall, still a great value, a solid release, nice big 8-year age statement. So not too bad. All right, I hope you enjoyed this review on What's on the Shelf Wednesday for the brand new George Dickel Bourbon. That's right, 8-year age-stated bourbon, with a quick bonus review of the latest Bottled and Bond release from George Dickel as well. 13-year, 100 proof offering. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit the like button. If you haven't yet, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Let me know what your ideas are for the next What's on the Shelf Wednesday. And if you've gotten to try this one yet, gotten to try the 8-year, always love hearing your thoughts. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. So, you know, I'm gonna blend these real quick. I'm gonna blend a George Dickel Bourbon and Bond, Bottled in Bourbon. But that's the name of my blend. All right, let's give it a try, guys. Wow, that actually might be better blended than both on their own. That's crazy. I'm having more of that. Take care, guys.